When you're young, aging feels theoretical. Yes, you are aware of death. You see older people. You see people with the features of becoming older. And yet, in your perspective, in your somewhat muted, youthful, slightly ignorant perspective, aging and the idea of actually dying feels so far away. It feels so beyond into the distance that it's almost not a possibility. At least it wasn't for me. When I was in my early 20s, yes, I was starting to become aware of the fact that human beings are fragile, temporary creatures, more so because of family members of mine, not immediate, but aunties, uncles, grandparents, that were starting to pass on. So I was, as morbid and as dark as it sounds, I was a frequent visitor to the cemetery. So the idea and the concept of a finite amount of space and time was something that was made very apparent to me as a young person. But before those things happened, I always was in recognition of, yes, dying is a possibility, and yes, it's a reality and inevitability, of course, but I had all the time in the world. And that has changed, quite honestly, due to the fact now, at least psychologically, I'm in my 40s. That decade, the fourth decade of life, where the possibility, and not only the possibility, but the closeness of not being here one day is becoming a very real and apparent feeling. Now, like I explained in earlier videos, I don't have the clear-cut, stereotypical definition of fear when it comes to death. I've always been someone who is rather pragmatic, a matter of fact, about the reality of being a human being and the inevitability of being in the ground one day. That being said, looking in the mirror now really brings the fact home. And even though that I still get sometimes complimented that I still maintain a youthful appearance, a youthful energy, and that's not by accident, by the way, I still see things in the mirror, I still feel things. And even though I feel strong and fit and healthy, I definitely know that this body and the organs within the body are 41 years old, nearly 42 years old. Thankfully, I don't have any chronic pain or illnesses or disease. But no matter how much I strive for longevity and I do everything right in the present with one eye on the future, I do know that the day that I will no longer grace this green earth is approaching. And it is much closer to when I was in my 20s. Now that's not really saying much, but the point of this video is to really highlight the quiet terror of aging. Now, I've always been someone who has had the opinion that aging is a privilege, aging gracefully, aging in a way that you see more of life, experience more of life, meet a bunch of people because of the years you are afforded, is the natural progression of things. I've even said that aging beats the alternative of not aging, if you catch my drift. So many people die young. They never have the chance, the opportunity to really seize their older selves because, well, they die young. So the title of this video, The Quiet Terror of Aging, is a quiet terror. Now, I'm not waking up every morning panicking. I'm not distressed. There's not really a level of anxiety about getting older, but there is a feeling of inevitability, of a closing in, of the net becoming tighter. And that's my time, feeding through that hourglass, that proverbial hourglass, of which, again, no one really knows how much sand is in there. I suppose being a man, I focus less on the exterior. I mean, I still try to present well, especially when I'm recording. I make sure my hair is in a certain way. I'm clean shaven most of the time. But without wanting to overstep here and come across as ignorant or ill-informed, I think females, women, have a much harder time with the concept of aging. I've been to South Korea quite a few times. I've been fortunate enough to go to South Korea, and they are the cosmetic surgery capital of the world. Now, there's nothing wrong with enhancing the way you look, with really making sure that the youthful attributes that you have are preserved for as long as possible. I have no judgment, no feelings towards it, other than to acknowledge that it exists. Where I'm going with this is that the quiet terrors of aging, and not only aging, but the quiet terrors of edging closer to that endpoint, really shine and really become evident in everything that we do as we get older. Because what I realized the other day, death doesn't arrive suddenly. Of course, barring tragedy, sudden illness, sudden death. Let's take that out of the equation. Let's say that you, on paper, live to 75, 80, an average lifespan. The notion of death, the Grim Reaper lurking in the shadows, it doesn't appear suddenly. It's a slow, progressive, eerie edging towards your consciousness. At least it is for me. Again, I'm not fearful. I'm not afraid of the tap on the shoulder. But the signs of aging, the subtle signs of aging, because I'm such a youthful dude, I'm playing. But the signs of aging that I can see, that I am privy to, that I am honest with myself about, they're just reminders that this body is decaying, this body is declining, and this body will not be here in 40 years, 45 if I'm lucky. Again, this isn't to depress you. This isn't meant to make you feel down, bleak and blue about your day or night ahead. It's just another thought, another musing that the quiet terror of aging is something that a lot of people really feel. So they take action in an according way. They do the cosmetic changes, they push away the wrinkles, they smooth over their skin. Again, nothing wrong with that. But I'm looking at the whole concept of pushing away the aging, the terror of aging, from a psychological point of view, from a human point of view. Forget the superficial, forget the actual procedures. I'm not speaking directly about that. What I am speaking to is the psychology behind aging, the psychology of acknowledging that death is getting closer, and the way people live subsequently the rest of their days. I am fascinated, morbidly so perhaps, of that recognition setting in the minds of people, and then really almost wanting to watch the way they live out the rest of their days, because some people absolutely panic. They fall into an absolute terror and anxiousness and anxiety they could never rid. I mentioned in an earlier video the denial of death. One of my most favorite, albeit harder books to read of all time. But I think the integral theme of this video, the quiet terror of aging, really speaks to that deniability, really speaks to that human defense mechanism, that response of no thank you. I don't want to acknowledge this. I don't want to see it in the mirror. I don't want to have to wake up in the morning and feel my body surrendering to the other side. I just found it an interesting concept. It appeared to me the other day when I was looking at myself in the mirror. I was brushing my teeth. I don't make it a habit of staring at myself in the mirror for no apparent reason. But I was in the bathroom, I was brushing my teeth, and I edged in, I moved closer to my reflection. And for the first time, probably ever, I didn't particularly like what I saw. Now look, I'm not trying to portray myself as someone who is a senior citizen or who is someone who is older than 41 or 42 suggests. In fact, I would imagine after some time, when more people watch this video, that those who are longer in the tooth than me, who are older, may be looking at me through the screen and thinking, you're not old. You're not what you're saying you are. And from the lens of their perspective, that may be reasonable, and I would objectively perhaps agree with the notion that 40, 41 isn't old. Life begins at 40. That old adage is something that people constantly remind me of. I think that is another element of deniability though. I think that's another way that we reshape our impending death in a way that makes us feel better about it. It's a story for another day. What I'm saying is that someone who perhaps is in their 60s, 70s, looking at this video, looking at me right now in my 40s and thinking, you have more time, you don't have to be thinking about this. To that, I would say, well, I am, and I am feeling those things. And I think it's important to be in recognition of the aging process, be in recognition of what's at the end of that aging process, and be in recognition of the inevitability of possessing a human body. The human condition is something that none of us can ever escape. So, to circle back to the idea and the theme and the concept of this video, the quiet terror of aging essentially is code. It's a poetic way to say, shit, I'm actually dying. This body will not last me. My mind is only another 35 years away, perhaps even less, from failing me, from not preserving who it is I am, from relinquishing the consciousness that has really made me who I am, the spark, the youthful energy, the ambitions, the creativity, everything that makes you, you, and me, is slowly declining, is losing the magic, is losing that composure, is losing that psychological, emotional, and human integrity. That's what the quiet terror of aging means to me. Not when I look in the mirror necessarily and say, there's another wrinkle, there's a grey hair. That's part of it, that's a superficial element. But what it really means to me is that who I am as a person, beneath this flesh puppet, beneath everything you see on camera, beneath these tattoos and this t-shirt and this haircut, it is the dwindling, the declining magic of me as a human, as it will be for you, as it perhaps is for you right this very moment. So another heavy theme, I know, this is how I speak, this is what I think about, this is what I want to put on video on this YouTube channel. So if you've taken something from this video, if you've resonated in a way that makes you feel like, you know what, I want to hear what this guy has to say in his next video, or I want to check out some of the previous videos, I'm going to give him a subscribe. I would appreciate that. More importantly, I'd like to hear what you think about this topic, because it can be slightly controversial, because again, a lot of people deny the natural progression of a human lifespan, and they do so out of fear, out of a feeling of not wanting to rot. Now that's a harsh way to put it, but that's what happens. I mean, we all have grandparents, we all know what happens to the human body when we venture into our 80s and if we're lucky 90s. I'm not going to paint you a bleak, dark, unflattering picture of what happens to the human body, but the skin, the eyes, the organs, the teeth, the nails, the hair, it melts away. And that in itself is the perfect resemblance of the picture of death. If I could tell someone for the first time what death looks like, as opposed to just pointing at a corpse, if I had to really paint the picture of what death looks like while still maintaining a beating heart and a somewhat ticking mind, I would point to someone in their 90s and say that is on the doorstep of expiry. Again, that's dark, that's morbid, that's depressing, but it's not my intention to convey that feeling. What it is doing though is reminding everybody, reminding myself even, that time is running out. Hence the name of my YouTube channel, The Time We Have Left. To think about death and the quiet terrors of aging, of which is basically the yardsticks along the way to that final resting place. I think to be in acknowledgement of that is an important aspect and an important element to anybody's human psyche, because it really changes and shifts and reframes and reshapes the way you view the time you have left. So I think, speaking of time, I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate you watching to the end. Again, if you like this type of video and you want to have your say, have your piece in the comments, please, I encourage you to. And yeah, if you want to see more, subscribe. So that's it from me for this video. I will see you in the next.